There's a certain kind of quiet that only exists after midnight. Not normal quiet. Not the silence you get when everyone's asleep. This is different. This kind of quiet feels like the whole world is holding its breath and waiting for something to happen. Streetlights hum louder. Empty roads look wrong. Your own house sounds unfamiliar, like it's breathing. That's the hour when people see things they don't talk about in the daytime. It's when you notice something standing just a little too far out in the dark. It's when you hear a voice that shouldn't be there, or footsteps in a place no one should be standing. These are 3 stories from that hour. 3 nights that never felt normal again after they happened. I'm not telling you these to scare you. I'm telling you because I think sometimes you don't realize you're in danger until you're already standing in it. And I don't think the dark cares whether you believe in it or not. Welcome to the Vile Echoes. I grew up in a small town that nobody visits on purpose. People only pass through it on their way to somewhere else. We've got a diner, a bait shop, a school that looks like it hasn't been updated since the 80s, and a bunch of houses that all needed work 10 years ago. On the very edge of town, there's an electrical substation. It hums all night. Past that substation, there's this open stretch of land. Looks like a dead field. Mud, straw, weeds, and some half-rotted fence posts. Everyone just calls it out behind the substation. Nobody really calls it anything else. You learn things growing up in a place like that without anybody ever saying them straight. One of those things is, you don't go behind the substation at night. People don't warn you directly. It's more like, don't mess around out there, or you've got no reason to be going that direction in the dark. It wasn't told like a scary story. It was told like common sense. This happened in October. I was 19. My friend Mason had just installed this ridiculous LED light bar on his truck, and he wanted to field test it. Like he was doing something tactical instead of just being bored in a dead town. We were driving around back roads for a while, and then he said, "Let's go out by the substation. See if there's anything in the field." I told him nobody goes out there at night. He grinned and said, "Exactly. So if security shows up, we'll see them coming from a mile away." We drove down the access road past the no trespassing sign that everyone pretends isn't there. The substation was buzzing like always. That high, steady electrical hum that almost makes your teeth feel weird. He parked with the truck angled toward the field. We killed the headlights, left only the bar on. It lit up the stubble and mud in this flat, harsh white. I remember being annoyed at how bright it was because I suddenly felt way too exposed. There's nothing around you out there. Nowhere to hide. At first it was nothing. Just an empty field and the line of trees at the far end looking like a black wall. I was about to tell him to knock it off and take me home when he said, "Hey, what is that?" He pointed. At first, I thought it was just an old fence post way out in the middle of the field. The light caught something that looked like a vertical shape. But the longer I stared, the more I realized it wasn't a post. It was too tall and too thin. It looked like a person standing alone in the middle of an open field in the dark, just outside the brightest part of the beam. Mason said under his breath, "No way," and tapped the high beams for just a second. Whatever that shape was, it dropped straight down. Not like it ducked. Not like it ran. It just folded into the ground and vanished. Mason swore and punched the steering wheel. I felt this cold pressure hit the middle of my chest, like my body understood something before my brain did. I told him, "Back out." Now, he shifted into reverse, and while he was doing that, we heard it. It came from the middle of the field, halfway between where that thing had been and where we were parked. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't words. It sounded like a human voice being forced through a broken speaker. A short, sharp, cut-off burst, like someone trying to yell, "Hey," but getting choked halfway through. It echoed in a way that didn't make sense in an open field. The whole time, the substation behind us just kept humming like nothing was wrong. Mason's hands were shaking on the gear shift. He threw the truck into reverse, and the tires spun uselessly for a second in the mud before catching. When we slid back and the light bar swept across the field again, I wished we hadn't done that. There were 3 of them now. 3 shapes, spaced out across the field, all facing us. All the same wrong height, the same wrong thinness. None of them moving. I hadn't seen them move into place. They were just there. We didn't talk the whole drive back. Not until we were already back in town, parked in the gas station lot under actual lights with other people around. Like that somehow meant safety. Mason lit a cigarette with hands that were still shaking and said, without looking at me, "You know that wasn't nothing." I said, "That field used to be something, didn't it?" He nodded. He told me there used to be trailers out there, a little community. He said a flood took the whole thing out, years before we were born. He said a few people died, and that the town never rebuilt because the county ran lines for the substation through the land, and said it wasn't zoned for housing anymore. I asked my uncle about it later. He was quiet for a minute and then said, "Yeah, a lot of folks lost everything when that water came up." He wouldn't tell me how many people died out there. I asked him why people say not to go behind the substation after dark. He said, in this voice like he was tired of repeating it, "Because the ones that are still out there don't always know they're gone. And if you stand there long enough, sometimes they'll think you're one of them." I said, "What does that mean?" He just looked at me and said, "Don't go back there." I went back the next afternoon by myself, in daylight, because I needed to prove to myself that it was just weird lighting and panic. The field looked boring. Mud, scrub, the line of trees. Nothing in the middle. No footprints, no trash, nothing. But when I walked the access road, I saw something in the dried mud where we'd parked. Tire marks from Mason's truck, my shoe prints, his shoe prints. And then, starting maybe 10 feet in front of where we'd stood, I saw another set of prints. Lighter, longer step distance than ours, deeper in places, like whoever made them leaned forward. They went maybe 8, 9 paces out into the field. There weren't any prints coming back. Some places hold on to people. That's what nobody tells you. We talk about haunted houses and haunted objects, but sometimes it's just land, dirt, a piece of ground that doesn't forget who bled there, or drowned there, or froze there. You think you're just passing through, but the place doesn't see it that way. The place sees you standing in it. The place thinks you belong. A few years ago, I rented the upper unit of an old split house right outside Ann Arbor. Technically, upper unit just meant I got the second floor and access to the attic for storage. The landlord, Tom, made it sound like a bonus. Most people don't get attic space, he told me. Later, I realized what he meant was, most people don't want it. The house was from the 1920s. Narrow stairs, doors that didn't quite close unless you lifted and pushed at the same time. Out front was a little porch facing the street. Above that, tucked under the peak of the roof, was this small, round attic window with old yellowed curtains. From outside, it honestly looked like an eye, always half open, always watching. Tom told me to keep the attic hatch shut because of drafts and raccoons. That's how he said it. Like those were the only two things in the world that can get through an attic door. The first few weeks were fine. I work late, so I'm up at 2, 3 in the morning a lot. That's when I started hearing the footsteps. Light steps. Not heavy boot stomps. Not normal house settling. This was specific. Slow, cautious steps across the attic floor, right above my bedroom. Heel, toe. Small, like a kid trying not to get caught walking where they weren't allowed. I told myself squirrels. Tom said squirrels too when I mentioned it. He wouldn't really look at me when I said the footsteps sounded like a person. He just said, old houses carry sound weird. And then he repeated the part about keeping the hatch shut. Then, early October, my neighbor across the street waved me down while I was hauling groceries out of my car. She was an older woman, the kind of person who notices everything on the block. She said, "Hi, honey. I didn't know you had a daughter." I blinked at her and said, "I don't." She frowned a little and said, "Oh." Then after a pause, "Well, maybe I shouldn't assume. I just saw a little girl in your attic window last night. Blonde hair. She was looking at the street." I waved and she closed the curtain. I just stood there holding a bag of groceries and all the hairs went up on my arms. That night I didn't sleep. I dragged a chair into the hallway and sat under the attic hatch just staring up at it. That pull-down ladder hung there with the little string, and every time the house creaked I thought it was going to drop on me. Around 1:40 a.m. I heard the footsteps again, directly above where I sat. Slow. Walking from one side of the attic to the little round window, then back toward the center. Then stopping above me. Then nothing. I didn't pull the ladder down. I couldn't make myself do it. The next afternoon, I worked up the nerve to go up there. Daytime felt safer. I pulled the ladder down, climbed into the attic, and immediately felt how cold it was up there. The whole place smelled like dried wood and old fabric. Unfinished beams. A few boxes from the previous tenant pushed off to one side. And that round little window at the front with the yellowed curtain hanging in 2 pieces. The dust on the floor was mostly undisturbed except for one area. Right by the window there were 2 lines of smudged half-moons. Back and forth, like someone had been standing in the same spot and rocking on their heels wearing sneakers. Not boots, not heels. Sneakers. Small ones. You could see where the dust had been rubbed thin and the darker old wood showed through. I took a picture with my phone because I knew if I didn't, I would convince myself later I imagined those prints. When I showed Tom the photo, he glanced at it for maybe half a second and said, "That's raccoons." I said, "Raccoons don't stand in one place and rock back and forth looking out the window, Tom." He said, "You'd be surprised how people misinterpret animal prints." And then he changed the subject. A few nights later, I came home from work and there were 2 police cars parked out front. Lights still turning, but sirens off. Tom was talking to one of the officers. When I walked up the steps, he kind of half blocked the door with his body, like he didn't want me going inside yet. One of the cops asked me, "Do you live on the upper floor?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you have anyone else living with you? Any minors?" I said, "No." He looked at Tom, then back at me, and he wrote something in his little notebook. He didn't tell me what was going on, and then eventually they left. They didn't bring anyone out with them. After they were gone, I asked Tom what that was about. He rubbed his face and said, "Look, just don't go up there at night, all right? If you hear anything, don't open it." "I'll take care of it," I said. "Take care of what?" He just repeated, "Don't open it." I moved out in November. I didn't wait for the lease to end. I didn't ask for my deposit back. I just packed my stuff and left. I still have that photo of the shoe prints by the attic window. Sometimes I pull it up and zoom all the way in just to make sure I really saw what I think I saw. But every single time I do that, I get this feeling, and I don't even know how to describe it. It's like if I ever post that picture online, she'll see it. And I don't actually want her to know I saw her. People like to say, "I was alone in the house." You've probably said that. But what you actually mean when you say "I was alone" is "I didn't see anyone." That's not the same thing. The world gets real different the first time you understand you can be watched by something that doesn't care if you believe in it. The first time you realize you're not the only one awake. My dad always told me, "Don't stop for anything on the reservation roads after dark. I don't care if somebody's waving you down. I don't care if somebody's in the ditch. I don't care if somebody's lying in the middle of the highway. You don't get out of the car. You drive to the sheriff and you send them back." I used to think that was just standard paranoia dad stuff about not getting robbed or attacked. After last fall, I don't think that's what he meant. It was almost 2 in the morning. I was driving home alone. No streetlights out there. Just miles of 2-lane road cutting through trees and scrub. My headlights only lit about 30 yards ahead of me. And past that, it was just black. I was maybe 20 minutes from home when I saw something in the road up ahead. I slowed down. At first, I thought it was a deer that had been hit, but it wasn't shaped right. As I got closer, I realized it was a person, lying on their side, right across the center line. Jeans, dark jacket, one arm pulled in, the other stretched out like they'd been trying to crawl. I pulled up slow, hazards on, window cracked just a little. I shouted, "Hey, you okay?" My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. No answer. I rolled a little closer, just enough that my headlights hit his upper body. That's when the head moved. I need you to understand this. The body didn't move. His torso didn't twist. He didn't push himself up with his arms. Just the head rolled back, like it was loose on the neck, and tilted at this angle that didn't look possible. His chin lifted toward me. His mouth was open too wide. Not screaming wide. Broken wide. I felt something in me go ice cold in one instant. Then, without warning, he started to get up. But it wasn't how a person stands. He didn't brace with his hands or push off his elbow. His chest just lifted, like something under him grabbed him by the sternum and pulled straight up. His arms hung down for a second like dead weight, then kind of swung and caught up to the rest of him a moment later. That's when every part of me said, "Get out of here now." I slammed it into reverse and hit the gas. The tires squealed and the car lurched backward. While I was still reversing, he moved. He went from slow and broken to sprinting at full speed in less than a second. Not at my window, at my passenger door. I only saw him in pieces. A shoulder, a flash of his jacket, the smear of movement in the corner of my headlights. Then I heard him hit the side of my car, hard. I panicked and threw it into drive and went around him, swerving onto the opposite lane and then back. I didn't stop accelerating until the turnoff to my neighborhood. I pulled into my driveway, shaking so hard I couldn't get the keys out of the ignition for a minute. I sat there with my forehead on the steering wheel and tried not to throw up. The next morning I went outside to look at the car in daylight. On the passenger side door there was a smear right around the handle and down toward the wheel well. I thought it was going to be blood. It wasn't. It was this black, grainy stuff, almost like ash mixed with oil. It smelled burnt, like someone had held a trash bag over a fire. I didn't tell the sheriff. I told my dad. He didn't react the way I expected. He didn't freak out and say we had to call someone. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just listened really quietly until I got to the part where the thing hit the car. Then he said, "Did you get out?" I said no. He nodded and said, "Good. Don't stop for anything out there at night." I said, "What was that?" He shook his head and said, "You're not who they're looking for." I said, "Who are they looking for?" He said, "Not you," and wouldn't say anything else about it. I don't drive that road anymore. I will literally go 40 minutes out of my way to avoid it. People act like fear is dramatic, like it's some big loud thing. But the truth is, fear can be really calm. It can just be a decision you make and never change again. I made mine. Some people think horror is about monsters. They think it's about teeth and claws and shadows at the end of the hall. It's not. Horror is about the moment you realize something is standing right in front of you, and you don't have a name for it. It's about the point where the world stops making normal sense, and you're forced to understand that you're not the only thing awake. A field that still belongs to the people who drowned there. An attic window that shouldn't have anyone behind it but does. A man in the road who moves like his bones aren't put together right. These are the things people carry. They don't brag about them. They don't tell them at parties. They only ever come out late, when the house is quiet. And they're still up because they don't really sleep like they used to. If you heard something in these stories that felt familiar to you, you're not alone. If you've seen something you can't explain, I believe you. This has been the Vile Echoes. Make sure you're subscribed for more. And before you go to sleep tonight, do one thing for me. Lock your door, check your window, and whatever you do, don't look too long into the dark.